guys, it's Emily. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, or if this is your very first time here, thank you for stopping by. In today's video, I am going to be talking about how I stopped my toddler from breastfeeding. So if you are currently trying to wean your baby or toddler, or if you are thinking about weaning, then this video is sure to be helpful. One thing I am also going to be talking about at the end of the video are the symptoms that I had from weaning. I know that there are a lot of women out there who wean and have no issues whatsoever, but I was one of the unlucky ones, and weaning kicked my it was rough. So if you want to stick out towards the end of the video to hear about what my symptoms were from weaning my toddler, then be sure to check that out if you're interested. Okay, let's get started. I decided that I wanted to be done nursing by the time Landon was 2. My body had been through a lot in terms of breastfeeding, and I was just ready to have like my autonomy back. I was ready to not have to worry about going super long without nursing. I didn't want to have to pump, etc., etc. So let's talk about how I cut out the daytime feedings. Like I mentioned, as Landon got older, the random feedings throughout the day just naturally happened. He just started to become more interested in food and actually snacking throughout the day, real snacks instead of nursing. And also I think just as he got older, he just didn't need that source of comfort from my breast anymore. He was able to, find other ways to get comfort from me through cuddles or just through quality time. However, once I made the official decision to start weaning, I really cracked down on cutting out those random snack feedings throughout the day. So if Landon would come up to me and ask to nurse, and how he would ask to nurse is he would say nay nay. That's what he would call nursing, which I don't know why. It's just so cute, and I almost want to like tear up like saying that, because just thinking about him saying that, it was so sweet, so endearing, so sweet, so pure. And so he would say nay 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 nay, and what I would do is I would just offer a distraction. So I would say, Landon, not gonna have nay nay right now. How about we go do some Play-Doh, or how about let's cuddle and read a book instead? Because usually like when kiddos are wanting to nurse, that means that they are needing like some type of comfort or some type of security. So I would offer some quality time instead. So some quality time through doing an activity, like let's do Play-Doh, or let's have a cuddle and read a book on the couch, or just some type of activity where I'm spending quality time with him and giving him that source of comfort and reassurance, but not through nursing, if that makes sense. Okay, so let's talk about dropping that first session, which for us was the nap time session. This was the hardest session to drop. And I was really scared after this. I'm like, oh, if this is indicative of how weaning is gonna go, I'm really scared. But it actually got better, surprisingly. So the nap time session was definitely the hardest to wean. What I decided to do is I did not want to wean cold turkey for that nap time session. I wanted to try to make it the least traumatic for Landon as possible, and B, I wanted to be the nicest to my breasts as possible. I did not want to get more plug ducts or mastitis. So what I did is I weaned that nap time session gradually. And what I mean by that is the day that I decided to wean the nap time session, I nursed him as normal during that nap time session. And the next day is I would slowly start to taper the time that he was nursing. So what you can do is before you decide to wean, or that day that you decide to start weaning, you can kind of take note of how long your toddler is nursing total, and then once you start weaning down the session, you can just start subtracting minutes or even seconds. So you can just say, okay, today I'm gonna breastfeed them 30 seconds less than he did the day before, or a minute. Or if they switch sides a lot, like Landon did, you can just say, okay, I'm going to nurse on my right and left side, and then right again, but I'm not gonna let them have my left side for a second time. And that's how I did it. I would both kind of wean down how many sides he had, and also just not let him be on there for a long time, if that makes sense. I figured that the nighttime feeding was going to be the last feeding to go, because he would always relax a lot and sometimes fall asleep nursing at night. And I didn't want to cut out the morning feed first either, because my breasts were always the fullest in the morning, and I did not want to go an extra like 6 hours by cutting out that morning feed and stretching it to the nap time feed, especially because I struggled with mastitis and plug ducts. After about a week, he was only nursing from each side once. And then once that happened, I just started lessening the time that he was on each breast. And like I said, since he switched sides so many times, he wasn't really on each breast for a long period of time, but I still just tried to cut it out as gradually as I could, just to make it the least traumatic for Landon as possible. And then when it got to a point in time where I was barely nursing him on each side, I just cut it out cold turkey at that point in time. So that day I did not nurse him at all. And even though I felt like I had weaned the session really slowly, he still threw a fit. Like, of course he would. Like, he just didn't get that source of comfort. He didn't get that part of his routine. He had been so used to that as part of his routine for 2 years. So I totally get why he threw a fit. So nap time for the next like 3 to 4 days, you know, he would ask for it, he would cry, he would scream, really, really upset. But I just stuck to my guns. I was really adamant about doing this, and it got better. It got better. It was, like I said, like 3 to 4 days, really tough. He didn't nap very well. He would scream and cry in his crib, and I would have to go in there quite a bit to console him. And it was so hard because I knew that if I just gave him my boob, he would calm down. But I knew that I would never get to the goal that I wanted to of weaning if I just gave in. So I stuck it out, and eventually, like I said, after 3 to 4 days, it got a lot better. After weaning that session, I wanted to give about like a week to a week and a half for my breasts to adjust before dropping another session. And the next session that I decided to drop was the morning feed. And this was actually the easiest. I thought this would be the easiest to drop, and it was the easiest to drop, because in the morning time, there's so many distractions that you can offer. It's a brand new day, your child is full of energy. They're usually the most like happy in the morning, at least Landon is. And so I just offered distractions. You know, there's breakfast that can be offered, there's toys that can be offered. You know, let's go play, let's read a book, let's snuggle, let's go have oatmeal, let's go have French toast, or, you know, let's go get some water. And this session, he asked a couple times, but I would just offer a distraction or an alternative, and it was easy. After like 2 days, he didn't even ask for nay in the morning anymore. And I thought that I was going to have to like hand express or something, because my breasts were always the fullest in the morning, which is obviously 100% normal. But I think I only did that once, and then they didn't feel that bad. So I just let my boobs go one day. I just let them go from that night before when I had nursed all the way until the next night. And I never got any plug ducts. I think at that point my boobs were starting to like shut down or realize, okay, we're closing up shop. And thankfully, like, they responded really, really well to the weaning. How I weaned the morning session, I did the exact same thing that I did with the nap time session. I did wean this session about the same amount of time that I did the nap time session. So about over a week's time. And I just did the same exact thing. So he would often nurse both sides like twice. And then so I would just wean him or let him breastfeed both sides twice. And then the next day, just start to whittle down the time that he was nursing on each side until he was just nursing on the right side once and the left side once. And then once he was just on both these sides, starting to whittle down the time he was on the right side, how much time he was on the left side, until I just was not nursing at all. I think it was about a week. I think the first session, the nap time session, was like over a week to a week and a half. Morning session took about a week, and then I gave my breasts another week to adjust. And like I said, my breast adjusted really, really well. I was low-key freaking out that it was going to be a disaster, but it worked out pretty good. Once that morning session and the nap time session were cut out, I just nursed Landon at nighttime for about a week to a week and a half. And I was scared at that point to wean the nighttime session because of how it went with the nap time session. And about a month prior to doing this whole weaning process, I had gone out with some girlfriends for some ice cream. And I left Justin, my husband, in charge of Landon to put him to bed. And Landon didn't get to nurse. And he screamed the whole time I was gone. I ended up having to actually come home from ice cream to nurse Landon to put him to bed. So I was worried it was going to be that situation all over again. But I just did exactly what I did with the other two sessions. I just started cutting down the time that he was nursing on each side until he got down to just nursing the right side and the left side, until finally the time was so short that I just cut it out altogether. And Landon actually did really, really well. I was pleasantly surprised. He asked for Nene that first night that I did not nurse him at all. We just decided to read extra books to just kind of make it like a difference in routine, but like a happy difference. So, oh, Landon, like, we're gonna read a special book tonight, or we're gonna read an extra book tonight. So that's one tip that I think worked really well, is instead of doing like nursing, you can offer like a snuggle, or let's read an extra book, or let's play with this fun bath toy, or just trying to swap that nursing time for a special activity or something special. That worked for us. Maybe it'll work for you. But Landon, that first night that I did not nurse him at all, I was ready for SHIT to hit the fan. He asked for Nene, and when I said, no more Nene, Nene's gone bye-bye, he kind of like whined a little bit, but he didn't cry, he didn't scream. I was so sure that when we put him in his crib, he was gonna freak out, but he didn't. And I think that, to me, showed that he was really ready. So overall, weaning for us was really easy. I was not expecting it to be easy. I thought it was going to be a disaster, but I think that my plan of weaning really, really slowly, even though it felt kind of painful at times because I'm like, I just want to cut it out. I just want to be done. By choosing to wean over like 6 weeks time, it made it a lot less painful. Less painful on my boobs, less painful on Landon, less traumatic for him. So I hope that those tips helped. And if you have any sort of questions that I didn't cover in here, please leave them down in the comment section. I'd be happy to have a chat with you. And now I'm going to go into my symptoms that I had when I stopped breastfeeding. I had these exact same symptoms when I stopped pumping. I stopped pumping August of last year. So my son was like 14 months. I just stopped pumping cold turkey. I was so over it at that point in time. I'm like, I'm completely done. I was pumping morning and night, I think, at that point, or just nighttime. I can't remember, it's all a blur. But when I stopped pumping and when I stopped breastfeeding, I had the exact same symptoms. I was exhausted, like 10 a.m., not able to keep my eyes open. Just like, I felt like an absolute zombie. The 2 periods that I had, so before I finished weaning, I had a period. And then the period after I had completely done weaning in July, and then August, awful periods. My hormones, I think, were trying to figure what the F they were trying to do. And oh my gosh, really bad cramps, really heavy periods, terrible back pain, terrible cramping, and like just like I was really bitchy and just mean, and just I think my hormones were just swinging, crazy mood swings. But yeah, bad periods, terrible. This period, my September period, much better. So it took like 2 months for my cycles to figure out what they were doing. So I think maybe my hormones now are finally leveling out. Let's hope so. Hair loss. Yay! I've read that this is a thing because I was like, my hair started to grow back wonderfully after I lost it following pregnancy. And then just in the last 2 months, I'm like, why is my hair falling out again? Like right here especially, it's just like thinned really bad. And I read that that can be a thing. If you're exclusively breastfeeding from when your baby is born, you can still hold on to some of that like pregnancy hair. And then when you're done breastfeeding, all of it falls out. And so that's what I'm dealing with right now. And it's not fun, but I read that it only lasts like 2 to 3 months. So I'm hoping that now I'm on the upswing of things. So I've still kind of been freaking out about it, but I'm just listening to the articles and saying that I'm fine and that it'll grow back. So if you have the same symptom, take heart. It's gonna be okay. I guess this isn't really like a symptom, it's more of a sign. But my nipples got lighter, and I was so used to seeing my nipples the same way for like 3 years. Now they're light, and I was like, are my nipples okay? And I'm like, I think that's the way they're supposed to be. I mentioned a little bit earlier the mood swings. I was like cranky, bitchy, moody, weepy, just going through all the different feelings and emotions. It was a fun time. I literally thought that I was pregnant for like 2 months straight. And obviously I would get a period, so I knew that I wasn't pregnant. And then the next month would come and I'm like, I swear I'm pregnant. And I went through that exact same feeling back when I quit pumping, when my son was like 14 months. I was so sure that I was pregnant just because of how I was feeling. But no, it's just crazy breastfeeding hormones messing me up. I also, in between my periods, I would get really crampy. And I don't know if that was my ovaries like waking up or my uterus doing weird things, but I would get like cramping in my uterine area in between my periods. So I'm guessing that that was probably a weaning symptom because I had not had that months and months and months before this. It was just like those 2 months after weaning before my hormones like figured out what they were trying to do. So I'm guessing that is a symptom too. I got another symptom that I had was I kind of had like little bouts of depression. Not like real depression, but I would just feel like depressed. And I really think that hormones had a lot to do with that. And just, I wouldn't feel depressed like all month long. It was always like when my period was coming near. And it wouldn't last super long, but it just was more intense than I had had it before, because sometimes before my period hits, I just kind of get like down and just kind of blue. But this was much more intense. But it never was to the point where I felt like I had to be on medication or needed to like go talk to someone. I really just thought that it was hormones, and I just had to do like happy things to get myself out of it. Not to say that people with real depression can just do happy things and it makes them feel better. But just since mine was completely just tied to hormones, I was able to just like get myself out of it by like doing happy things, surrounding myself with things that made me feel good. And that definitely did help, and it seems to have leveled itself out by now, which is awesome. Another yucky symptom was a yeast infection. And I actually, that was one of my symptoms that I was pregnant. Way back when I got pregnant with my son, I got like a little mini yeast infection several days before I tested positive for pregnancy. And I got a yeast infection after I weaned. So there has to be something weird that hormones do that make you susceptible to yeast infections. So that was another symptom. So if you weaned and you got a yeast infection, I'm sorry. They suck. Put coconut oil up there. It really helps, I promise. And the last symptom that I wanted to talk about was increased urination. And this sounds so weird, but I think I've read about this, that women always think that when they're newly pregnant, they're peeing all the time. They think it's because of like your uterus, but I've read that it's actually because of hormones. I think it's like progesterone or something. And that totally makes sense, because when I weaned off the pump, I was peeing all the time. Like I would pee and then 15 minutes later, I had to pee like crazy again. And then the same thing happened when I weaned from breastfeeding. I was peeing all the time. And that's another reason why I thought I was pregnant, because I'm like, well, you know, like I've only really heard of people peeing like crazy when they're pregnant, so maybe I'm pregnant. And I was not. So it's just hormones doing crazy stuff. And that concludes all of my crazy symptoms. It's been a wild ride, but I think or hope that my hormones have leveled out. I do feel better. Overall, my periods have gone back to normal. I'm not feeling super like roller coaster of emotions, not peeing like crazy all the time. Hopefully my hair is growing back. So I think that we are on the up and up. So that was my journey with weaning my toddler. I hope that these tips were helpful for you. I hope that me talking about my symptoms was helpful. You are not alone if you go through crazy symptoms. I'm just one of the unlucky ones that happen to go through crazy symptoms. If you have any questions, like I mentioned earlier, please leave them down in the comment section and I'd love to chat with you. And I hope to see you in the next video. Please like this video if you found it helpful or interesting. And that's it.